Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto x Tenten x Temari, Twilight Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The fight was completely one-sided. After Tenten lay vanquished on the edge of Temari's fan, the two suddenly vanished into thin air. What evil things lurked through the mind of Temari as she carried off her vanquished prey towards the land of sound so far away? She wouldn't be near ears or eyes, and was completely safe. She dropped Tenten on the floor as she landed upon a tatami mat to wake her up, the victorious smirk never leaving her face. Wake up, snot. Tenten had been shocked and upset all in the same time when she had been defeated by Temari. It had been unfair. She had been outclassed and the fight had not been fair in a way. She heard someone's voice as she drifted back into unconsciousness. I said wake up. She walked over to slap Tenten back into consciousness, pacing the floor slowly, and her eyes never leaving Tenten as she came to. You, what made you think you could ever beat someone as skilled as I? If Tenten wasn't awake she was now. She opened her eyes wide as she felt the stinging slap and looked up to see her opponent that had beaten her and she tried to muster up a glare. I gave it my best, isn't that enough? She said loudly. Temari gave Tenten a smirk as she stepped closer. No, it's not, you just weren't born as talented as I am, it's a shame, for you to even think you could be a kunoichi. Your kind should worship and admire my kind. Face it, wench, you'll never be a kunoichi. She cocked her hip and stood proudly, her ego swelling mightily in front of her. Tenten felt a stabbing pain in her chest briefly. No, she would be calm with this woman. If you keep acting like a bitch, one of these days you'll regret hurting those around you. And I don't care what you have to say about my talents. I worked my damn off to be at the level 1 was at. You, if you hadn't used that stupid wind of yours, you'd probably be dead. I never miss my targets. Ha, never until today, failure. Such a shame that you worked so hard, so much effort, only to find yourself having your handed to you by a kunoichi natural. Sad that I do have talents outside of my fan, my superior intellect. What do you have without your projectiles, wench? She gave a smug smirk at her, her green eyes burning with intimidation. She would break her down little by little until nothing of her remained. Tenten knew what kind of game the sand woman was trying to play with her. She glared at the woman. She would do her best to outwit her. Why don't you shut up? She glared, fiddling in her pouch. If her weapons hadn't been taken away by now, she would certainly attack the woman right now. As she tried to go to her pouches, indeed, every single weapon attached to Tenten was gone. Every last scroll, kunai, and tag. A soft, harsh laugh rose from Temari's soft lips. Exactly, as I thought, you pathetic wench, you're nothing without your toys, powerless, nothing now and forever to be nothing, except a failure. Temari stalked slowly towards Tenten. Now, what to do with such a weak excuse? Tenten glared and smirked as she suddenly lashed out with her foot to try and trip Temari. I still have taijutsu. She called out, my entire team are taijutsu experts. She said as she attempted to get to her feet. Caught off guard, Temari was tripped up and sent to the ground. Behind her, the door was locked however, and Temari scrambled to her feet, taking a fighting stance. Bring it, bitch. But you're gonna catch hell once I'm through with you. Tenten just laughed and shook her head. You better not use your little fan there. She said and immediately went to her own fighting stance. She then came at Temari and attempted to kick at her and punch her as well. She had been indeed taught well by her sensei and her teammates. Ha! The kick was easily blocked as she moved to grab the wrist of Tenten. Once her hand touched Tenten's, she would slowly move Tenten's arm around her own throat and walk behind her, and from there to apply a sleeper hold to her head. Damn it! Damn! 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 Screamed Tenten into her head as she was grabbed and then began to struggle when she was placed in a hold around her neck. She attempted to kick at Temari's shin to get her to let go. She was losing oxygen by how tight the hold on her neck was becoming. Temari growled loudly in pain as her shin was kicked, and down she went onto her back. She somehow had to regain control of this situation, or she would end up being the dead one here. Tenten then turned quickly and attempted to kick at her, accidentally tripping over something as she went to pummel Temari with her fists. She then practically was on top of Temari after tripping onto her. She glared and then attempted to punch Temari. Growling and wincing as the punch connected, Temari lashed up to punch at Tenten, grabbing her legs and twisting her hips, hoping to send the two into a roll together. Tenten cried out when she was punched back, "Bitch!" She yelled and attempted to get Temari off her. "Get off!" She growled and tried to knee her in the stomach. Quickly rolling her to her back, Temari again punched at Tenten, following it up with another. She planted her feet and slowly tried to stand up slightly, Tenten still wrapped around her waist, as Temari continued to bring the punches on. "You're the bitch." Tenten winced as she was punched again and again but managed to finally catch the next punch and attempted to twist Temari's arm to make her stop. She then also attempted to get herself unentangled from Temari's waist. Yelling out in pain as her arm was twisted, Tenten slipped free from Temari's waist. Growling viciously, Temari threw out a kick to Tenten's ribs, hoping to drive the wind out of her and regain control once again. Tenten was kicked and indeed the wind was knocked out of her. She winced and held her ribs and now was distracted. She glared at Temari for a moment, but pain was in her eyes and was also distracting her from concentrating on winning this fight. Moving back behind Tenten, Temari this time wrapped her own arm around Tenten's neck and reapplied the sleeper hold. With a devilish smirk, she also delivered a firm slap to Tenten's rear with a slight rub as well. Growling, "Bitch, I'm gonna make you mine now." Tenten jumped slightly and a heavy blush began to form on her face at Temari's crude words. She attempted to free herself again, accidentally grinding herself against Temari. "Let go of me. Now, sicko." She cried out but again was losing oxygen fast. Slowly as Tenten began to fade, Temari delivered another firm slap to her rear, rubbing it again. Temari softly began to chuckle very evilly, slowly following Tenten down as she dropped to her knees. Tenten was lying on the floor now and tried to muster a glare up at Temari for a moment and attempted to get away from her. "Stop touching me like that," she shouted. Her blush was now evident on her cheeks. The sleeper was released, yet another firm slap was delivered to her rear. "You like that, don't you, bitch?" As Tenten attempted to crawl away, Temari reached out to grab her by her hips and slowly pull her back in. "You want it, you want more." She smirked, noticing Tenten's flushed face. Tenten felt like her body was beginning to be set ablaze, indeed being turned on by this. This was wrong, so totally wrong. She glared at Temari, she would soon have to give in to her. She whimpered as she was slapped again and wiggled her hips slightly. "Stop please," she said softly and pleadingly. Though in reality she was enjoying it. Chuckling again, Temari slowly moved Tenten to her hands and knees and smacked her rear again, moving up to her own knees to grind softly against her rear. "Command me." "I think not, little wench. I'm in command here, and now you will become my personal bitch when I'm done with you." She continued to grind, harder, against her rear. Tenten let a small gasp out and another whimper. Now she was really feeling hot. "Fine, get it over with," she said in surrender. She was feeling very flushed now, her face was entirely red. There was no way she would let this stop now, she needed it. She then attempted to grind back against Temari. Into her pocket she went, and Temari slowly hooked on a strap-on, slowly removing Tenten's pants and clothes, casting them to the side, holding to her hips. Temari carefully aimed the dildo and penetrated her, wasting no time in immediately thrusting quickly, at a nice fast pace inside of Tenten. "That's it, bitch. Take it." "Oh God," Tenten shouted out in pleasure. Wincing a little though, Temari was rough, she could handle the roughness. "Yes," she moaned out and attempted to move with the pace Temari was brutally pounding into her. Chuckling and cocking her hips at an angle, she moved Tenten to a different angle and kept the pace going, a bit harder yet still fast as the dildo slid along Tenten's walls. That's it, bitch. Your kind should worship kunoichi like me. You're powerless, now and forever. Tenten started tossing her head back a little and moaned louder as she felt herself already on the verge of climax. Faster please, Temari-san, she cried out. She sounded so desperate at this moment. Temari groaned loudly and rammed the dildo faster into Tenten. You like it, don't you, bitch? You like it, huh? Huh, she repeated. Huh, with each hard and fast thrust inside of Tenten. You're mine now, little wench, you belong to me from now on. Yes, yes, I love it. She was practically in tears from how much pleasure she was feeling. She then cried out Temari's name as she came all over the dildo after another minute or so of pounding. Temari groaned and moaned out in pleasure with her, heavily turned on by her climax over the dildo. Before Tenten could catch her breath, Temari grasped her chin and fiercely planted a kiss on her, her tongue quickly dancing with her own. Tenten kissed back and attempted to tongue battle with her. She looked at Temari as they kissed. Reaching down, Tenten began to touch Temari. For some reason she wanted her to have her own pleasure. Gently she rubbed Temari where she probably wanted it most as they kissed. Temari softly purred as she was rubbed, turning Tenten to face her as she continued heatedly kissing her, her hands rubbing all over Tenten's back. A soft satisfied purr rose from her throat to leave her lips. Tenten heard the purring and smiled a little and continued to kiss back just as hotly. She continued rubbing her womanhood. She also attempted to thrust a finger into her gently. Moaning with desire, Temari slowly slinked to her back as Tenten thrusted her finger into her. Temari grasped Tenten's wrist and encouraged her to keep going. It seems you are enjoying this, Temari-san. She giggled a little and continued to thrust her finger into her and went faster with her thrusting. Temari moaned her approval. Soon her moans grew higher and louder as Tenten thrusted her fingers faster into her steadily growing wetter flower. Harder, harder, wench. She planted hot kisses along Temari's neck and continued to thrust her fingers into her as hard as she could. Moaning louder, Temari began to softly rub her as Tenten kept caressing her. She felt her body's heat rising and her hormones surge. It wouldn't be long for Tenten. Tenten then bent down and kissed Temari's lips as she added another finger into Temari's now sopping wet vagina, her finger thrusting picking up speed now. Holding her face close, Temari indulged in Tenten's kiss, moaning louder against her lips as Tenten kept stroking her. Soon her mouth opened, and her loud moans began to pour out. Harder, harder. Tenten took this time to lash her tongue into Temari's open mouth and started pounding with her fingers into Temari as hard as she could. Finally unable to take it anymore, Temari tightly closed her eyes and arched her back, her tot peaked as her rose, and released a complete high peak of rapture. Her breath came in rapid pants as her juices flowed out of her. Tenten removed her fingers from Temari and sat on her haunches for a moment, her hand was soaked from Temari's love juices. She looked down at the woman who had beaten her, and had taken her innocence away. Was Tenten now a lesbian? She had always been gaga over her teammate, that she knew she could never have. He was just too angry at his own family, and she knew she could never have the Hyuga really. He was a Hyuga, and they held such high standards it seemed when it came to choosing their life mates. Temari opened one of her green eyes lazily to stare at the girl who had just brought her to her own wonderful climax. She had chosen this girl to be the one for a reason it seemed. And after what she had witnessed and felt, she had chosen quite well. She had become infatuated with Tenten's fighting spirit, in trying her hardest to prove herself, that she could be a strong kunoichi. That was a trait that Temari admired. Temari could openly admit she was a lesbian and probably had somehow gatalized the Konoha girl in front of her. Temari then reached up and grabbed Tenten's arm as she tried to push herself into a sitting position after managing to catch her breath. Where do you think you're going, wench? I'm not done with you. I told you you're mine now. She purred into Tenten's ear, pulling the poor girl into a tight embrace. Tenten gasped as she was pulled into the blonde's arms like this. Temari-san, we shouldn't have. I mean, this is wrong. She was silenced by Temari kissing her softly on the mouth. The kiss was rough yet also gentle. By the looks of this, it seemed Temari could be gentle when she was in that form of mood. Temari began to massage Tenten's tense back as she kissed her and pulled away after 2 minutes passed when Tenten started to kiss her back. Be quiet, or I'll make sure the ones in charge of my team will have a new pet for themselves. I want to keep you, you're mine. No one can love you like I did today, and I mean no one. Do you understand me, wench? Temari gave Tenten a fierce gaze as she grabbed Tenten's chin roughly. Tenten felt frightened a little at how dominant Temari was being. How could someone that she had only met in battle actually love her? But something deep inside her was screaming at her to accept Temari's love, which this was her only chance at it, and she could not pass this by. Tenten then spoke meekly. She would accept Temari as her lover, if this was what she truly wanted. Hi, Temari-san, what does this mean though? I've never actually had a relationship like this before. I mean, I'm only 13 years old. Temari chuckled at Tenten's words, but she accepted them, and that's how I like them, young. This whole thing means, you're my little toy for now. Temari then pulled Tenten onto the mat that they had on and wrapped her arms around Tenten's waist. Tenten frowned at how crude those words were, but Tenten could only guess that they were Temari's way of coping with the world and with certain kinds of situations. As she was pulled against Temari's body, she felt this was strangely right, to actually be in Temari's arms like this. She felt Temari's breath on her neck as the blonde spoke in a whisper. I'll bring you back to your village in a little while. I'm sure your teammates and the rest of Konoha are searching for you. She said, while brushing a soft kiss against Tenten's cheek and settled behind her. Slowly Tenten would hear Temari's breathing becoming regular as the blonde drifted off to sleep. Tenten sighed softly in contentment and drifted off to sleep, knowing she had found someone that she would treasure for the rest of her life, it seemed. When Tenten awoke, she was met with a pair of moonlit eyes, which Tenten had once swooned over, that is until she had met Temari. She blinked blearily up at the eyes held slight concern and yet also a hard iciness. Neji, she managed to croak. Tenten, you are lucky that the medics found you when your opponent disappeared with you, we thought you had been kidnapped. Said the prodigy coldly. You've been in the hospital for over a day now. Tenten frowned a little. Why couldn't Neji be a little more cheerful for once in his damning life? Then realization came to her. Temari had left her somewhere where they would find her. Just as Temari had promised her before Tenten had fallen asleep in the blonde San Kunoichi's arms. Flashbacks to the hot passionate moment with Temari came back to her full swing. A small blush began to creep onto the dark brown-haired Kunoichi's face as she remembered. Tenten, are you feeling alright? Asked Neji as he noticed the blush creeping onto her face. Your face is flushed. Perhaps I should get the medic ninja. Tenten quickly looked up at Neji and then shook her head. Hi, I'm fine, never better actually, so what happened after I was taken? She wanted to know if Neji and Lee had passed, she would put aside her feelings for Temari and make it look like she was so concerned for her teammates. I managed to pass the preliminaries, Lee did not, he was beaten severely by the red-haired sand ninja that was on the same team as your opponent was. Said Neji simply. Tenten could almost swear Neji was gloating about his victory. Is Lee alright? Shouted Tenten all of a sudden, when she heard that Lee had been beaten by Temari's teammate, frowning. The medics said he might not be able to continue his existence as a shinobi by the severity of his injuries, they are not sure. Said Neji, Guy-sensei is currently with him in his room, I came here to see if you were awake and to ask you a favor. Tenten was now very worried about Lee, he was a good friend of hers, and she cared about him like a brother, seeing she had no family of her own. Her parents having died when she had just joined the Ninja Academy. She perked up when he said he wanted to ask her a favor, and immediately she responded. What sort of favor, Neji? I lost all my weapons, and, she then noticed that her summoning scrolls had been retrieved and placed on the nightstand next to her bed. She wondered who had retrieved them. I retrieved your weapon summoning scrolls. As for the favor, I have 1 month to prepare for my battle with Naruto Uzumaki in the final exam. I want you to aid me in a jutsu that I am trying to complete, and I think your skills will help me in achieving this new jutsu, said Neji as he crossed his arms tightly against his chest while gazing at her with those eyes of his. Tenten was a little shocked at Neji's request. He actually wanted her help. She wanted to tell him no, but she also wanted him to win. Though her feelings for him was now merely that of friendship, she could silently admit she was starting to feel something for Temari now. In reality, she felt flattered that Neji wanted her help also, in a small tiny way. Okay, I'll give you a hand, Neji, she said simply, trying to get up out of her bed. Her back ached and her legs also slightly, but she had managed to stagger out of bed, without any help from Neji. As she began gathering her wits and her things, her thoughts lingered on the passionate moments she had shared with Temari. Tenten hoped she would be seeing the blonde again, and had a feeling it wouldn't be too long before the blonde sand woman would indeed appear into her life once again. She had spent her days with Neji for the next month, training hard with him, helping him in every possible way she could to complete the jutsu he had been making. The day of the tournament arrived and Tenten and Neji had an early practice that morning before the matches were to begin. She had heard that Temari was to face off against Shikamaru, someone from her own village. Silently she would cheer for Temari when it was her turn. For some reason she had the urge to do this. As Tenten finished throwing the last weapon down at Neji's spinning chakra barrier, she landed in a crouch, panting and out of breath. She tried to speak. I can't go on anymore, it's perfect, no flaws at all. She had enjoyed this past month with her teammate, helping him perfect his 8 trigrams palms heavenly spin technique. In a way, this was helping her improve her own skills as a kunoichi. I guess I'll cut this training session short, and get going, arigato, said Neji as he had his back to her, but was looking at her slightly. He then slowly began to walk off quietly, his arms at his sides. Tenten called out, "Give Naruto hell, Neji. Show him what you're made of." She smiled, and could almost catch the faintest of smirks on the young prodigy's lips as he continued to walk away. Tenten began to unsummon her weapons and gather her scrolls up. Placing them in her pouches, she could have sworn she had felt someone staring at her from the trees. Tenten had to hurry up if she wanted to go see Neji's battle with Naruto. She was going as Neji's support, and plus the fact that he was her teammate, and she always tried to support her teammates no matter what the situation was. As she finished packing and was halfway to the arena, when a hand snaked out from out of nowhere and tugged her into a tall bush. Tenten wanted to fight back but suddenly felt a pair of arms wrap around her waist and was pulled against someone's body. "Did you miss me?" cooed a female voice. Tenten had her eyes closed at the moment and immediately opened her chocolate brown eyes that met emerald green ones. "Temari-san!" cried Tenten. The sand kunoichi gave Tenten a smirk as she held the girl in her arms. For some reason Temari had missed the dark brown-haired girl over the month that had passed. Certainly her dreams had been haunted by the beautiful visage before her. Temari then gave Tenten a chaste kiss on the lips and pulled back and cooed into her ear. "I can't play with you right now, Tenten. I just came to tell you that I was going to be fighting one of your friends from your village, but I'm sure you already heard so." Temari was then interrupted by Tenten as the kunoichi spoke up excitedly. "I'll cheer for you too, Temari, even if Shikamaru is a ninja from my village, but I'll be doing the cheering silently, so we don't arouse suspicions." "I missed you," said Tenten softly under her breath. Temari picked up what Tenten was saying and chuckled. "It almost sounds like you're in love with me, even though you're my little toy, right now," sneered the blonde. Temari had wanted to warn Tenten of the impending betrayal of the Sand Village. She wanted to protect her so much for some reason, but she knew if anyone found out about that Temari had her way with Tenten, Temari could be very well killed for this. Temari then gave Tenten a more passion-filled kiss on the lips. nibbling on Tenten's bottom lip as she kissed her. She hoped Tenten would be safe or at least have the brains to escape the village that she knew would come under attack soon. It was Tenten who pulled out of the kiss 5 minutes later, gasping for air. "Good luck, Temari-san, in your battle," said Tenten lovingly. Temari gave Tenten a brief nod and vanished quickly into thin air right in front of Tenten's eyes. One of these days, Temari would confess her love for Tenten, she vowed this. After the Chunin final exam had been interrupted by the attack of the Sound Village and Sand, Tenten had been busying herself with her training, and keeping Lee company through his hardship of not being a shinobi anymore. Neji's tournament battle had shocked the hell out of Tenten and even Lee as well, but Tenten had been also amazed at Temari's battle with Shikamaru. The lazy had Temari dead to rights, and yet he gave up so quickly, making Temari the winner by default. She wondered what her secret lover had been thinking at the time, at least before Tenten's mind had gone blank and she had succumbed to Kabuto's Temple of Nirvana Genjutsu and passed out. She had been awoken by one of the adult Junin, she couldn't remember her name, Kurenai Uehi, apparently the sensei of Team 8, Neji's cousin Hinata was on that team if Tenten hadn't been mistaken. She had kicked herself in the butt for missing out on the battling that apparently had gone on during her Genjutsu-induced slumber. So with as much time as she could spare, when she wasn't going on a mission with her team, she helped to rebuild Konohagakure. She had also taken note that Neji seemed different after his battle with Naruto, like a great weight was lifted off his shoulders. She was glad he was trying to be, what was the word, a lot friendlier with his teammates and those around him. What was also cool though, after the funeral of Sandaime Hokage, was that Naruto had brought back her idol, Tsunade, to the village so that she could take over the position of Hokage, seeing the village had become weakened after the aftermath of the giant battle. She noticed that Neji had been spending a lot of his free time, training with his Byakugan, and had apparently no interest in the inauguration ceremony of the new Godime Hokage, when Tenten had come to inform him. Perhaps he just needed time to practice new skills, which did not require her aid. She was more than happy to use those times when he didn't need her, to think of a way to see her forbidden secret lover. She wanted to see Temari again, she just had to. But it was so hard right now. Konoha and Suna weren't exactly friends with each other, after the attack on Konoha happened. Tenten feared this had also been a scam, on Temari's part. She knew Temari wasn't obligated to be with Tenten, she had simply wanted to fulfill a need and that need had been met. Tenten felt depressed at these thoughts that popped into her head. Temari was using her, which was the only explanation. Tenten should have known this would happen, and also should have known not to get her heart mixed up into a situation like what had happened to her over a month ago. This was fate's decision on her life, perhaps, that she would just be used a lot, never loved truly. Why did she always have to go for the people who were beautifully handsome or just plain beautiful? A tear threatened to leak from Tenten's closed eyes as she was sitting in a tree branch alone, her knees curled closely to her chest as her chin rested against them. She had a feeling, her love for someone would never be returned. Now she knew how Lee felt whenever Sakura rejected him. Temari probably would reject her if Tenten tried to confess she was smitten with the older girl. Tenten had to bury her feelings for Temari, just as she had with Neji. Right now, she would try to focus her attention on her training, trying to get better and be ready for the next Chunin exam that would come. This was the only way she would cope with her heartbreak, as painful as it was right now. This was also the only thing she could do. She had not been expecting to see Temari so soon, especially in a situation that had left her teammate, Neji, on the brink of death, and Lee, foolish simple Lee, having gone after the retrieval team. It had been Temari's brother that had saved Lee apparently from his opponent, that Lee had gone into great detail with while Neji was unconscious with her. Tenten had come to check on Neji, after he had managed to pull through, and was resting comfortably in his hospital room. She spent some of her free time in his room, while he slept, when she hadn't been sent on a mission or asked to train with the rest of her team. She heard a voice speak from the door. You should be glad that they managed to resurrect him. He looked so awful when we found him. Tenten turned towards the door and saw Temari standing there with her arms crossed. Tenten immediately got to her feet and walked over to her. Her visiting time with Neji had been over for 5 minutes already. She gave Neji's hand a gentle pat after getting up and walking away. She walked past Temari without saying much. Suddenly Temari reached out and grabbed Tenten's wrist and pulled her closer to the blonde. Tenten tried to break the grip on her wrist. She was not in the mood to be toyed with today, it had seemed. She had almost lost both her teammates, people she treated like her own family. Let go of me, Temari. I don't feel like talking, and yes, thank you for your help in saving Lee, and the others. Said Tenten spitefully at Temari. I've got some training to get to. My sensei. She was interrupted by Temari's scrutinizing glare, and her voice. I happen to know that your sensei has given you the next few days off. I talked to him. I haven't seen you in weeks. The least you can do is spend some time with me, Tenten, or do I have to remind you that I own you now? She said this last part more quietly, seeing there were people looking at the two as they passed by. Temari was wondering what was wrong with Tenten. She usually was cheerful, and probably would have been happy to see Temari. Today, though she was different, Temari blamed it on the fact that Tenten had almost lost both her teammates in that botched rescue mission, probably. But that was why Temari wanted to see Tenten today. She needed to be comforted, and only one person could do this, and that was Temari. Tenten wanted to just walk away and tell Temari to go to hell, but Tenten was not like that. She wouldn't stoop to Neji's level or anyone else who acted cruel to those that were just trying to help out. Tenten turned to look at Temari finally. She looked so damning sexy in that outfit of hers, and the mauve-colored outfit suited her quite well. Tenten continued to struggle with just leaving, or taking Temari's offer to spend what precious time they had with each other. Temari would have to go back to the Sand Village soon after all. She probably was only here to make sure that the retrieval team was going to pull through, and then she would probably disappear again, out of Tenten's life for a while. This was the life of a kunoichi, and Tenten had to remember this. Tenten then walked over and wrapped her arms around Temari's waist. She murmured softly, as she buried her face into Temari's chest, I missed you. I'm sorry. I was so stressed out. Temari looked around and quickly made a handseal and disappeared with Tenten wrapped around her body. The two reappeared again, but this time on the roof of the hospital. Temari smirked and turned to survey the place. This is perfect. No one can catch us up here. For what I have planned, she murmured, and then reached down and began to run her hands through Tenten's dark brown hair, gently, comforting, almost motherly-like. Tenten nuzzled into Temari's chest more as she felt Temari's hands rub her hair. She had never felt this sort of touch since her parents had been alive, and it felt good. All her doubts, that Temari was using her, slowly began to fade and melt away from her heart. Temari wouldn't have just shown up at Neji's hospital room door, just to chat with her. The woman probably had missed the weapon mistress also. Tenten then whimpered softly. Temari felt a dampness on her chest as she listened to Tenten's voice, that sounded sad. I couldn't be there to help them. I feel so useless. Temari-san, just useless. How can I be a kunoichi if I can't be there to protect my fellow comrades? Temari frowned slightly as she listened to Tenten's voice. Temari in a way almost felt the same. When it came to her two brothers, there were times that she wished she had been able to help Gaara. The village had treated him so badly as a child. All because of Shukaku being sealed inside of her baby brother. She had always beaten on herself, wishing she had been a better sister to him. She cursed her father for even choosing Gaara for such a thing, and in the process had killed hers and Kenkiro's mother as well. Gaara held a special place in her heart, just as for some reason this girl that was sobbing against her chest did now. Temari reached down to cup Tenten's chin in her hands, and tilted her head so that the girl's chocolate brown eyes were staring into her dark forest green ones. Hey, look at me, you can't change the past, okay? What's done is done. Just be glad that both of them managed to pull through such a horrible situation. How do you think your friends feel? They failed to retrieve the Uchiha, especially that blonde loudmouth, that was his teammate that left. Temari was rough, but she had a soft side as well. Temari then heard Tenten begin to say something, but quickly Temari silenced her with a soft kiss to the lips. Tenten's eyes closed as she felt Temari's lips on her own, and began to kiss back after another moment, her arms wrapping around the blonde's neck carefully. Temari smirked at this, and brought the kiss to another level, making it from soft, to just full of passion. Perhaps today would be a good day to tell Tenten how she felt about the dark-haired leaf kunoichi. Temari's hands began to wander down Tenten's pink Chinese shirt, resting one hand on her right and the other on Tenten's hip. Temari began to gently knead the flesh of the, which a soft gasping moan escaped from her leaf lover's lips as they continued to kiss. Tenten was enjoying Temari's touch. Today was a day that Temari would be gentle with her probably. Not that she wouldn't mind Temari being rough with her, but she knew the Sand Kunoichi was here to comfort her. Tenten then reached up and began to play with Temari's own chest. She looked pretty big by the look of it. Temari pulled away from the kiss and removed her hands for a moment and began to fiddle with the obi ribbon at the back of her outfit. Tenten, give me a hand with this, will you? Asked Temari as she continued to fiddle with it. Tenten quickly obliged her desert lover, and helped remove the ribbon, her fan, and even her armor. The only thing was left, was the purple top, which was now open to reveal Temari's fishnet top underneath, as well as her. Tenten had been shocked. Temari was so lucky indeed to be gifted with such big at her age. Temari watched with a bemused look on her face, as she saw Tenten's jaw drop at how big her were. A lot of the men of her village, be they old or young, had always gawked at her chest, since she had hit puberty at the early age of 11. Her were certainly lovely. A small blush creeped onto Temari's cheeks as she watched Tenten gaze at them like she was doing now. They aren't that special, you know, besides you saw them before, remember? Our first session, said Temari witty-like, batting her eyelashes. If you remember, I was distracted giving you what you wanted, I didn't have time to look at them, said Tenten, her own face was reddened from blushing. Temari began to laugh. The girl was still shy around her. Perhaps Temari hadn't fully gatalized her just yet. Today she would though. Well maybe you should get a better look at them then, said Temari with a sneer, as she reached over and grabbed the back of Tenten's head, after removing her fishnet shirt quickly with ease, and shoved Tenten, face first into her, almost suffocating her in the process. Tenten let out a muffled cry of surprise, and wanted to lift her head to give Temari hell but was immediately held there briefly with Temari's hand, as the woman purred. I want you to pleasure me, wench, now no complaints, get snapping, commanded Temari, becoming her dominant self once again. It was the only way she would get Tenten to do the things that Temari found to be pleasurable and fun also. Temari then guided Tenten to her right, as if a mother was guiding her infant to it. Tenten didn't exactly know what Temari wanted her to do with her beast, but suddenly got the idea in her head, and immediately latched her mouth to Temari's, and began gently tugging it with her teeth and licking at it with her tongue. Yes, that's it, good girl, hissed Temari in total ecstasy. For someone who was so inexperienced, Tenten certainly knew what she was doing. Temari began running her hands through Tenten's hair, trying to figure out how to remove those damning buns of hers, while arching her body against Tenten's own body heatedly. Tenten continued to lick and tug with her teeth, Temari's. Before just taking the whole thing in her mouth and began sucking on it gently, drool began to dampen Temari's as she did this. She loved hearing her desert rose's moans, they were music to her ears. She then switched to the other, giving it the same treatment as its twin. She was rewarded by another moan from her beloved as she began rubbing the other with her fingers gently. Before long, Tenten was pushed to the ground, Temari having removed most of her clothing as well as Tenten's. As soon as both women's clothing were off and tossed to the side, the two kissed again passionately on the mouth, while Temari was fingering the insides of Tenten's womanhood, trying to do this and keep Tenten's moans of bliss quiet by kissing her. Little did they know, they were being watched at this very moment, by not just one person, but two. Rock Lee had come to see where his teammate had ran off to. Guy Sensei had a meeting between him and her, about a mission that was coming up soon, which Guy had refused to complete it until Neji was back on his feet and such. He had searched the entire hospital, and the nurses had not been a help at all. They had said that Tenten had not left the hospital at all yet, or at least did not see her sign out on the visitor's sign-in-out sheet. So Lee had checked Neji's room, to find that the prodigy, and his eternal rival, had awakened, which Lee had spoken with him for about 10 minutes, filling him in on what was going on. And that he hoped Neji would be up and ready to go in the next few days, now that Neji had pulled through his ordeal. Lee then searched the other places, asking his fellow comrades that were still in the hospital if they had seen Tenten. No one had really. So the only place left to check was the roof. Maybe Tenten had gone up there to get some fresh air before leaving to go back to her home. At least this was what he thought, but was not expecting to see the two girls on the roof doing whatever in Kami-sama's name it was that they were doing at this moment. As Lee walked up the stairs towards the roof, he heard the soft moaning sounds coming from the roof. Lee blinked twice and mumbled to himself, "What is that noise? It sounds like someone is in pain. Wait, that sounds like Tenten." Immediately Lee rushed up the rest of the stairs, and almost broke the door down before stopping. His jaw dropped as he saw such a beautiful if not a disturbing scene in front of his eyes. There lying on the ground, was Tenten making out with that sand kunoichi, apparently Gaara's sister, Temari no Sabaku. Both of them were also. Lee's eyes widened in shock, and suddenly he lost his balance as he began to have a major nosebleed at the two girls making love to each other. Lee fell backwards and ended up crashing down the stairs, hitting his head on one of the steps as he went tumbling, and ended up at the feet of a nurse and apparently Naruto, who had been released just a few minutes ago. "Hey Fuzzy Brows, what the hell happened to you?" shouted Naruto, a little shocked at how klutzy Lee had been. He then noticed his nose had been bleeding. He then heard Lee start to mumble. I just saw something upstairs," stuttered Lee. He had a huge dazed look on his face. The nurse immediately spoke. "I think we better get him to a bed, he probably has hurt himself from falling down the stairs." Naruto turned to look at the nurse. "I'm going to go see what's going on upstairs, something spooked the hell out of Fuzzy Brows, and I want to find out." Quickly before the nurse could stop him, he managed to scamper up the stairs and froze in his step when he heard someone crying someone's name in total utter ecstasy. Naruto's eye twitched as they widened. Maybe I better leave whoever's doing whatever it is up there alone for now, and I don't think I want to get killed." With that he left the two lovers to themselves. "Temari-san," moaned Tenten as she felt her climax hit her with full force, after Temari had her fun with making the younger kunoichi squirm under her. Temari looked at her and kissed Tenten on the lips, a smirk on the blonde's face. "You liked that, didn't you, my little murmured Temari as she lay down beside Tenten after finishing giving her dark-haired lover pleasure. Tenten nodded and curled up against Temari's body and let out a yawn. Temari looked at her for a moment, and reached over to play with a freed strand of Tenten's hair. Tenten looked over at her for a moment and then closed her eyes, murmuring something softly, almost sounding like she had said she loved Temari. Temari blinked and shook her head, a little surprised at what she had heard. Tenten loved her. She actually did love her. This might make it a little more easier then for me to tell her my own feelings eventually, but how can I tell her that I do care for her, even if, God, I better get dressed in her dress and bring her back to her house, before someone catches me here with her like this. Thought Temari as she quickly got up and dressed herself, then with a bit of difficulty she dressed Tenten and quickly disappeared with another weave of hand signs. Ever since Naruto left the village, to go on a trip with the Sannin, Jiraiya, Tenten and Temari had busied themselves with their own duties and training. Both obtained the rank of Chunin the next time the exams happened, along with Tenten's teammates. Though Temari had become Junin apparently the year after, and had no time to spend with Tenten, seeing her village needed Temari more than ever. Tenten understood that, and had tried to not be too depressed about Temari not at her side. Neji advanced to Junin a year before Naruto was to return to Konohagakure from his trip. Tenten was so happy that Neji had managed to obtain the same rank as their sensei. Guy Sensei though decided to keep teaching and guiding them as their sensei, seeing two of his beloved students had still yet to obtain the rank of Junin as Neji had. Lee had been acting strange around Tenten ever since she and Temari had made love for the last time, since departing on their own paths of life. Even Neji was wondering why Lee had been acting so weird, weirder than his usual weird self. Neji had decided to one day confront Lee, seeing he had become closer to Tenten as a friend over the years. Lee, why have you been acting so strangely around Tenten? It's as if you can't even look at her the same way anymore. He asked demandingly as he crossed his arms. Lee bit on his lip as he stopped his practice on a training dummy to look at Neji. A shudder ran through Lee before he stuttered, while making sure the subject of their conversation was nowhere in sight. Tenten and Temari, you should find out why I treat Tenten differently from Temari no Sabaku. I cannot say, all I will say is that what I seen broke my heart in a way. It was not right, it was disturbing. Neji raised a manicured brow in curiosity, his friend and rival looked creeped out. Neji sighed and said, fine, we will both go and confront the Cage's sister, and we will find out the truth. I would not do that, unless you want to die quickly, Neji-kun. Temari no Sabaku is just as vicious in battle as her brother is, said Lee, not wishing to see Neji get injured from the confrontation. Then tell me what you saw that is so disturbing, that you treat our teammates so indifferently, demanded Neji out loud. Neji wanted to know so badly at this moment, because perhaps he had begun to show feelings for their Kunoichi teammate in a way. He waited with as much patience as an annoyed Hyuga could give to someone who was such an annoyance as Lee was, to speak the truth. Lee then began to flex and unflex his hands tightly into fists and such. He then finally came out with it. Alright, I saw Temari-san and Tenten-san have passionate on the hospital rooftop 2 years ago, when we were 14 years old. Don't tell Tenten I saw her please, she will kill me, squeaked Lee as he knew that if Tenten found out he saw the two lesbians doing this, he would be castrated and probably have his fed to the birds or something just as worse. Neji's eyes widened when he heard this. His eyes held a mixture of emotions at this point. Hurt was one of them, anger another. Neji then suddenly started stomping off, walking past a cheerful-looking Tenten who had been doing her daily jogging, that Guy Sensei always told them to do before starting to train. Tenten blinked when she saw the angered Hyuga storm past her. She quickly spoke up. Neji-kun, what's wrong? She never liked seeing her close friends angry or hurt. She then turned to look to Lee and asked, what did you do this time, Lee? Don't tell me you insulted him again. She crossed her arms as she glared at Lee. Lee quickly shook his head as he looked away from her. No, I didn't do anything wrong. Neji seemed to be in a bad mood when he came to train with us, lied Lee. Tenten frowned and wondered if Hiyashi did something to upset Neji today before Neji had come to their meeting. Neji had opened up a lot to her in the past year, and she was glad that he had opened up to her really, about his past. Tenten just shrugged it off, and decided to get on with her training. She had a lot to do, and so little time to do it in. She had received a letter from her beloved Desert Rose. She was coming for a visit soon, due to the approaching Chunin exams, and now that her brother was Cage, she had a lot of duties to complete, as the new Sunagakure ambassador to Konoha. That was why Tenten was so cheerful. She hadn't seen her beloved Temari in over 2 years almost, and was excited now, wondering if Temari would be happy to see her, just as much Tenten was going to be happy to see Temari. But Tenten also knew she had to act natural, News of her being Temari's lover for over 3 years now had been kept a secret between the two. No one was to find out about their relationship. Tenten then got to working on a new jutsu she had been dying to impress her teammates and even her lover with, not realizing that something bad was about to come out of this reunion with her beloved Temari. The two of them had the best time of their lives, when they did indeed reunite with each other, at their usual secret place, that they always met at, whenever Temari was in the village. Temari was tired though, but very glad Tenten was doing well and was happy to see her. Temari and her made love on almost every surface of Tenten's apartment that was possible for the 2 weeks that Temari was there for, pretty much. Temari though seemed different around Tenten, as if her thoughts were somewhere else, every time Tenten tried to say she loved the older blonde. This was starting to worry Tenten greatly. Tenten tried to confront her beloved one, the day before Temari was scheduled to return to the Sand Village. Temari-san, what's wrong? You seem so distant to me for the past few days. Asked Tenten. Worry was obvious in those chocolate brown eyes of the weapon mistress. Temari looked down at Tenten as the blonde sat up in Tenten's bed, pushing Tenten away from her briefly, as the blonde spoke. I've been put under pressure and a lot of stress lately, Tenten, by my village's elders. I'm sorry but I think we need to not see each other for a while, we need a break from each other. Tenten's eyes widened in shock, hurt in her eyes as she heard those words. She should have known Temari had become tired of her, Temari didn't love her anymore. Why? Did I do something to upset you? We haven't seen each other in over 2.5 years, and you want to break up with me now, stuttered Tenten. Tears threatened to fall at the corners of her eyes. Temari winced when she saw the pain that was evident in her leaf lover's eyes now. The elders had somehow figured out that Temari had been seeing Tenten secretly, and had demanded that Temari stopped seeing her immediately. Of course, Gaara was on the side of his sister, and had told the elders, perhaps Temari's relationship with Tenten could benefit their village in a way, and had demanded, no even threatened the elders to reconsider their idiotic demands. Not to mention, a certain other someone had threatened to reveal the relationship between the two to Konohagakure, and something else that was disturbing. That Tenten had slept with the enemy at one point. She did not want Tenten's good name to be ran through the mud. Temari also did not want her village to end up in civil war because of the Casecage's wishes. So she had come here to break it off. Tenten, listen to me, please, said Temari, in a not so loud voice, that wasn't normal for the blonde Sand Kunoichi at all. Just go. I should have realized all along that you were just using me. Go back to your village. I don't want to see you anymore. I understand now, shouted Tenten, not caring at all what Temari wanted to, or had to say now. Temari frowned and wanted to go over there and slap some sense into Tenten, but the strength that Temari usually had somehow just sapped away, the moment she saw how depressed Tenten was. Slowly, but with her pride still intact, Temari began dressing herself, and without another word she left Tenten's apartment. Leaving a sobbing girl with her own thoughts, and a broken heart. Tenten was indeed heartbroken. Temari had not spoken to her, or tried to, the day she was to leave. Tenten didn't care anyway, she knew all this time, that Temari was using her. She tried to act as normal as she possibly could around her teammates, burying the pain she had been feeling as deep into the recesses of her mind and heart as she could. As if this was not the only thing that could go wrong, something worse had happened. Gaara, the Casecage, had been reported kidnapped by Akatsuki. Tenten and the rest of her team had been dispatched to give aid to Sunagakure and to meet up with the newly reinstated Team Kakashi. Everything went as well as could be. They had managed to rescue Gaara, and defeat 2 Akatsuki. When they had all got to Sunagakure, and told they could rest and recover from their battles there, Tenten spent most of her time, keeping herself as far away from the Casecage's sister as possible. She still had a deep wound on her heart because of the breakup, and she wasn't going to reward Temari with showing off her pain, that she could still feel. If that wasn't enough, the night before her team and Team Kakashi was to return to Konohagakure, would drive Tenten over the edge into a deep and dark sunken pit of depression. Tenten had decided to go sit on the balcony of the room that she had been put in at the Cage's mansion, along with her teammates and such. She wanted to just leave that night to go back. She couldn't stand to be in this village for very much longer. She had lost count on how many times Temari tried to strike a conversation with her, when Tenten wasn't with her teammates. A noise caught her attention. It was coming from the other room next to hers. The other room's balcony doors were open. Now what? Thought Tenten. Curiosity was getting the best of her at this moment. She decided to go see what was going on, and maybe tell the people in there to quiet down. Tenten then walked back into her bedroom, and towards the door to her room. Opening it, she immediately walked down the hallway until she reached the door where the two people were making so much noise. The door apparently was opened just a slight crack. Tenten blinked when she took note of this, and she heard a louder noise come from the room. It almost sounded like someone was in pain. Tenten decided to make sure the person was all right, and immediately kicked the door open, about to shout out something, when suddenly she froze in mid-stride. There, possibly in the throes of passion, was her ex-lover, Temari, and her own teammate, Neji. Both looked towards the racket that had brought them out of their passionate moment, both their eyes wide with shock. Tenten, spoke Temari as she looked around Neji's arm. This isn't what you think it is. No, then what the hell is it, that I can see with my own eyes? No, don't bother getting up, either of you. I'll just remove myself from both of your presences. You don't have to worry about me anymore. Shrieked Tenten, tears falling down like waterfalls down her cheeks, as Tenten quickly ran down the hallway and back into her room. By then, the ruckus that Tenten had caused had not just aroused Lee, but also Sakura, Guy-sensei, Naruto, Gaara and even Kankuro from their slumber. Kakashi was recovering in the Sunagakure hospital from the battle with Akatsuki. Tenten had managed to get all her things packed, and decided to exit the place by leaping off the balcony. A heavy knock could be heard pounding on the door and someone shouting at her to open the door. It was Neji and Temari. Tenten should have indeed known that the only reason Temari wanted Tenten was so that she could get her filthy mitts on her own teammate. It was always like that. I'm so foolish, so damn foolish, for trusting her all these years. No wonder she never returned my love. She wasn't in love with me at all, just with that fucking Hyuga. Thought Tenten as she turned to head to the balcony. Lucky for her she had managed to lock the door. The pounding continued, not ceasing. So long everyone, I'm sorry, tell Tsunade-sama, I won't be coming back to Konohagakure, at least for a week, thought Tenten quietly as she quickly leapt off the balcony. Lucky for her, her room was just one floor up from the ground. Tenten then disappeared into the night, probably never to be seen for a while. Tears continued to pour down her cheeks. We have to find her, shouted Temari, desperate to apologize now to Tenten, before she does something foolish. This is all your damn fault, Hyuga. If you hadn't blackmailed me into dumping Tenten, so that you could pursue her, she wouldn't have ran off like that. It had taken Neji to break the door down, much to the displeasure of Temari's brother, Gaara, with his Jiyuken gentle fist. My fault. I see only someone who can not keep their hands to themselves. Spoke the Hyuga. I care not for Tenten anyway, she is already damaged goods, as one would say. Temari glared at Neji. What was the point of all this then? Arg, you are such an asshole, no wonder she went totally lesbian. Growled Temari as she pushed herself away from the Hyuga, to stare at Gaara, Kankuro and the rest of the Konoha teams that had come to save Gaara. Her eyes settled on Maida Guy, who didn't look amused that much at all. Gomen Nasai, Maida Guy, I'll do everything that I can to bring Tenten back to your village, even if it will cost me my life to do it. Said Temari. I will have to report this to Tsunade, Temari-chan, I'm afraid. As for my young student here, his punishment will be to help in the search to bring Tenten back. He then turned to look at Neji, who was just about to protest, but was silenced by a glare from the thick-eyed-browed Junin. Not another word, Neji. It is a crime to blackmail the Sabaku into dumping the love of her life, just for your own personal gain. You are lucky that I will not be reporting this to Tsunade-sama. I am also to blame, Guy-sensei. You should also punish me. I should have not kept this from you. I knew that Temari-san and Tenten-san were in love. It was my fault that I told Neji-kun, so if you are to punish him, you will also have to punish me. Spoke Lee. Worry was in his dark eyes, worry for his best friend. Guy was a little shocked at these words. He sighed and placed a hand on Lee's shoulder and shook his head as he spoke. I think we should all punish ourselves by searching for our youthful blossom then, Lee. But first, we have to return to Konohagakure and report the success of our rescuing the cage, and also report Tenten's disappearance. Perhaps she will send us to find her. Temari then turned to Gaara, who had his arms crossed. Tiredness was in his eyes at this moment. Gaara, please, let me go on this search. This is my entire fault. I should have never broken up with her. Gaara placed a hand up in emphasis to silence her and the others, before they could say anything else. He then spoke in that soft whispery voice of his. Temari Ne-chan, you have my permission, and as for backup, myself and Kenkiro will do what we can to help you find your girlfriend. He had struggled with the last word of his sentence. Temari nodded and bowed her head in respect, and murmured softly to him. Arigato, Gaara-sama. Gaara just nodded to his sister and turned to look at a sleepy-looking Naruto, who hadn't totally comprehended everything that had gone on. Gaara then spoke to Naruto and Sakura. You two will have to keep Temari's and Tenten's relationship a secret. If word gets out, this could complicate things even more. Sakura then spoke. Don't worry, I'll keep this on the down low, Gaara-sama. Naruto will just forget all of this when he wakes up tomorrow, so he won't be a problem. Naruto mumbled something sleepily about wanting ramen, which with all the stress going around, did not help them, but make them chuckle at the poor half-asleep blonde Jinchuriki. Temari then said once more. We should all get some sleep. A lot of us are going to need the energy tomorrow if some of us are going to go and help look for Tenten. The small group nodded their heads and all of them dispersed back to their rooms, but Temari knew she wouldn't sleep properly, until she had Tenten back in her arms, and she had sat down with her and had a heart-to-heart talk. All Tenten could feel, as she trudged through the desert, not caring where her feet took her, was nothing but pain. She had been stupid into thinking Temari wanted her for more than just her body. She felt betrayed, lost, every other emotion you could think of at a time like this. I'm such an idiot, why couldn't I see that? She had just wanted to get to Neji through me. They always go for him, thought Tenten, as she decided to stop in a small cavern. She could sense something was about to come from the horizon. A sandstorm, no doubt. Tenten found the closest wall, inside of the cave, and sat against it. It was lucky she had found this cave, because indeed a sandstorm began to whip up right outside. The tears that continued to fall down her cheeks and sting her eyes since leaving Sunagakure had begun freshly anew. She had been willing, that night, before she found Temari in Neji's own bed, to forgive Temari for breaking up with her. But now, she was perhaps glad that she hadn't. It was obvious, wasn't it? She was meant to be someone's trash, which could just be thrown away at a whim. Never meant to be loved, just used. Ten bit on her lip as she tried to hold back her tears, listening to the howling of the wind. I can't trust anyone, I just can't anymore. It didn't matter anymore. She would remain away from Konoha at least until she could calm herself down enough to face her team again. Tenten closed her eyes in a loud sleep, no matter how troublesome it would be to take her. Not realizing someone would come into her life and change her for possibly either the better or for the worse. Temari had been searching the desert as best as she could, alone, for the next week or two. She had asked anyone from the village that came across the missing kunoichi of the leaf, was to report to her, or Gaara immediately. Neji and the rest of his team joined Temari every so often, when Tsunade's demand for missions to be accomplished didn't take them away from the search. All Temari could say was that Tsunade was not amused by the Hyuga, nor was Neji's clan amused with him. Word had gotten out pretty fast. Once the teams who had saved her brother, which she was grateful for, report was given, and the news of Tenten's disappearance was by far the worst thing to have to tell the Godime Hokage about. Forgive me, Tenten, I had no idea you loved me that much. I should have been more attentive to your feelings. Leave it to me to ruin the only happiness you've ever been able to find. I don't deserve your love, after the way I treated you, thought Temari as she leapt from tree branch to tree branch, while searching in the land of rivers, the same place, where the Akatsuki had once had a hideout in. She can't be in this place, why would she go back to here? The Akatsuki could be still around here. Mumbled Temari. Don't give up hope, Temari-san, Tenten-san will be found, have faith that she will be alright, when we do find her. Spoke up Rock Lee, who had just joined her from looking in another direction. Temari stopped on a tree branch and turned to look at the Chunin miniature version of Maida Guy for a moment. Temari was worried at this moment, it was obvious. She had never cared so much for a woman, or anyone for that matter, as much as she cared now for Tenten. She then spoke to Lee, you're the only one that knows Tenten as much as I do, and do you think she will forgive me for what I did? Rock Lee sighed and thought about this. It is too soon to see. Tenten ran off because she was even more heartbroken to see you, and Neji, doing what you should have been doing with her instead. Tenten will heal though, she is a strong woman, and she will hopefully be alright. I was blackmailed into breaking her heart, Lee. She probably won't believe me even if we can bring her back safely. Said Temari as she looked down at the ground, sadness in her dark forest green eyes as she said these words. Yet, she doesn't know that you were forced to do that. Did you try and explain to her the situation of why and when you did break up with her? Asked Rock Lee, trying to get Temari's spirits up. I tried, she wouldn't let me explain myself, and she was so upset at me. I wanted to beat her up and force her to listen to me, I just couldn't do that. My tough exterior I give off to others is just a mask I have, Lee. Spoke Temari as she attempted to confess to him how she felt. Lee nodded as he listened to her words. He then spoke once again. All shinobi wear a mask, Temari-san, we all have to wear one, seeing it would be breaking the shinobi code to show our true emotions. What sort of mask we attempt to show to others is perhaps our way of also coping with the world around us. As I said before, Tenten-san will be fine, she is a tough woman, and she has gone through years of strife to prove her shinobi way, a simple heartbreak such as this, can only make her stronger. I guarantee this is how she is and will be. Temari smirked at Lee's words. Some of his words struck her as being very passionate, and were also aiding her in calming down her worry and some of the other feelings she was feeling. Regret perhaps being one of them. Arigato, Rock Lee, I feel already better now, let's get going, we've got a distraught Kunoichi to find and fast. Piped up Temari. Rock Lee nodded his head and the both of them quickly took off in search of Tenten. A new strength had appeared in Temari's eyes as she continued the search for the woman she had deeply hurt. All she knew was the moment she found Tenten, she was going to do something to help heal those wounds she had opened up in Tenten's heart, any way she could. Tenten had found herself in quite the sticky situation as she had traveled for a while away from those she called her friends, about a week to 2 weeks later. First she had gotten lost, which was rare for her. She usually always knew where she was going, and second of all, now she had what she thought to be a missing nin after her, which turned out, it was indeed a missing nin, but it was actually an Akatsuki. Well, if it isn't that Kunoichi that almost impaled me with some of her throwing weapons, spoke the blonde Akatsuki that Tenten had remembered all too well. Tenten glared at Deidara and shouted. What do you want with me? Get the hell away from me. Deidara just smirked as he was standing on top of his clay bird, he then leered at her, giving Tenten a once-over with his blue eye pervertedly. You're real feisty I like women who are feisty. Maybe if you're a good girl, I won't kill you but make you my pet Deidara almost fell off his bird when a kunai that just barely missed him, managed to cut him on the cheek. He glowered at Tenten, who by now was about ready to open her summoning scroll at this very moment. Deidara then wiped the blood that was now dripping from the cut on his cheek, and then shoved a free hand into the bag that he always seemed to carry with him. I guess I'll have to do it my way Too bad because the other way might have been a lot easier for you said Deidara, a murderous glint in the blonde Akatsuki's eye as he managed to finish making his clay bombs, and with a flick of his wrist, once they were ready, he flung them directly towards Tenten. Tenten only barely managed to escape the clay bombs. She attempted to fling a few more kunai blades, but wasn't given a chance to summon any more, when she heard the Akatsuki scream out the words, "Katsu." The small bombs exploded and Tenten was sent crashing into a tree. She let out a cry of pain. The explosion had also left her with some nasty wounds on her body, not just from the landing and such. Just as oblivion was about to swallow her up, Tenten known she was going to die perhaps, or worse, something much worse. It would not be until 5 months later that the search party would soon get a rumor and a tip sent their way that would lead them to where Tenten was now being held captive. Temari had been ordered to give up the search for her lost leaf lover, a few days after perhaps Tenten's encounter with Deidara. Temari refused to give up hope that Tenten would come back to Konohagakure. Neither would Team Guy. Even Neji was regretting ever sticking his nose in Tenten's love life, breaking the two girls up, just for his own selfish self. I miss her, murmured Neji to himself one quiet afternoon, out loud. As do I, Neji-kun. I wish Hokage-sama would let us go back on the search. I do not want to have to give up on her, but Hokage-sama needs us here, spoke a slightly depressed Rock Lee. We should just disobey Hokage-sama's order, and go look for her right now. Sabaku would probably come with us, said Neji, his delicate hands clenched at the moment into fists. Why do you suddenly really want Tenten to come back, Neji? I seem to remember you wanted her gone from this team, shouted Lee. Lee wanted to know why Neji now was so interested in getting their long-lost Kunoichi teammate back. Because you idiot, TCH, you wouldn't understand, growled Neji as he turned his back on Rock Lee and started to walk away. Seeing their training session was over, Guy had to go to some meeting with a few of the other older Junins. Whatever Neji's reason behind his sudden interest in getting Tenten back, was bothering Lee quite a bit. Lee wanted to go after Neji and yell at him and find out the truth, but Lee decided to take his anger out on a tree for a while before heading back to the village. When Lee returned, he heard someone shouting for his name. Immediately the Guy Mini-Me clone turned and saw Sabaku no Temari running over towards him. Temari-san, spoke Lee, slightly startled at seeing her here. No time to explain. Go pack a bag, and get Hyuga and your Junin sensei to come meet me at the gate. I just heard from a reliable source that someone knows where Tenten disappeared to for the last few months. Come on, we don't have a lot of time. Shouted Temari. The Sabaku seemed to be filled with worry and yet slight joy, and also was tired. Lee quickly nodded his head and took off for the others quickly. Thank God Guy Sensei was in the village today, having just finished a mission the other day, and was taking some time away from missions. Lee seemed excited now. Temari had a new lead to the whereabouts of his lost teammate. Just hold on Tenten, just hang on, we will find you. Thought Lee as he ran to get Neji and Guy Sensei first, before going to his house to pack a travel pack. Just get it over with, murmured a tired voice in the darkness of a cavern. The voice not only sounded tired but sound also weakened from exhaustion and from blows that had landed all over her body. Impatient aren't we? Spoke another voice. You think you'd learn by now that Pain-sama isn't going to let you go. No one is coming for you either. A yelp was heard coming from the voice that sounded so tired and weak. The voice spoke up again. Well, maybe if you and your friends would stop raping me. How many times have you done this to me? I guess your leader thinks it's a very great idea to let me be your toy, right? The voice was also feminine, and it belonged to none other than the woman that Konoha had been searching for the past 5 months since she was reported missing, Tenten. The owner of the other voice, who was in the process of attempting to make his victim feel good, was Akatsuki's crazy bomber ex Iwagakure Nin, Deidara, started chuckling. If you would stop resisting and attempting to run away, we wouldn't have to tie you up, but now would we? You seem to be getting a little fat around the stomach area, my dear, and more lazier. Tenten wished to Kami-sama that she had not been caught by Deidara, had not been raped, had hell not been foolish to even attempt to fall in love with the woman she now hated the most. She had felt she had been right all along. She had been blinded by her emotions for the woman that she couldn't even remember her name now, seeing she was just so tired and drained from crying so much, from screaming at her captors to stop raping her. She had given up all hope that her village would find her and rescue her, but it was a very much a lost cause. She could feel him inside of her now, and also could tell he was inside of her now, because he had wrapped her pale legs around his waist, even though she could not see very well in the darkness at the moment. She tried not to make a sound, as he had his way with her, which lasted what she thought was at least 10 minutes. She had even stopped counting the days that had gone by. She was surrounded by darkness for God knew how long now. She heard him let out a grunt after a few minutes more of his painful thrusts, before she felt him lick her cheek as he bent over, one of his hands laying on her abdomen. Thanks for the whore. Don't worry, Pain-sama is going to let you go eventually, when I've grown tired of you, which is coming soon actually. Spoke Deidara into her ear, as he slowly got to his feet, giving her a kick in the leg as he walked away from her. Tenten let a small whimper of pain escape her lips as she attempted to crawl into a corner, trying to test the chakra-draining restraints they had put her arms in. The chain allowed her to move around a little, which was good. She felt weakened even more. She felt she was on the verge of death now. Suddenly she heard footsteps again, wondering if Deidara had come again to do something to her. But instead she felt the gloved fingers of someone brushing gently against her cheek tenderly. Tenten flinched slightly. You poor girl, I wish Deidara-senpai would stop doing such horrible things to you. Don't worry, I've been a good boy for the innocent Kunoichi. Toby been a very good boy. He sent for help to get you out of here, even though Toby knows that Leader Sama might not like this very much and might hurt Toby for it. Toby doesn't care, he can't bear to see a pretty girl be continuously harmed. Tenten was a little shocked to hear this man talk to her like the way he was. She felt him pat her head gently before leaving the room, leaving Tenten alone in the darkness once again. Tenten didn't care if she was rescued. She just wanted to fall asleep and never wake up from this nightmare that was her life now. It was true though, every time she got raped from either Deidara or the weird one that said he was immortal, and nothing she attempted to do could possibly make a difference. Mostly it had been Deidara though who raped her. It was also strange that she hadn't seen the immortal one for a while. She wondered if Konoha had killed him or something. All I want to do is just sleep and never wake up again. She never cared about me, neither did anyone from my village, so I might as well face the music, thought Tenten. Tenten suddenly felt a small fluttering like pain in her lower abdomen briefly before it completely stopped as she drifted off to sleep again. Oblivious to the fact that she would indeed be rescued by the woman that had inflicted so much pain onto her, it was only a matter of time before Tenten would be back in Konohagakure safe and sound. Another thing that Tenten did not know yet, or she did know indeed, was that a little surprise was awaiting those in Konohagakure when they did finally bring back the messed up Kunoichi. But what this surprise was, would have to wait and see.